everybody? Brother Nathan here, back with another episode of the Kingdom Project, and with me,
Brother Braxton. I'm so excited for this episode. It's going to be a good one. It's episode 15.
bro.
Episode 2 of our new season 2. Super excited. I feel like the episode that we've done already was pretty solid for this month, and so I'm excited to do another one.
Rolling right along.
And so, if you want to open up with the verse that we have.
Yeah, so today we're going to do 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9, and I'll read it, and then Brother Brax will speak. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness.
And that is the title of this episode, is His Strength Made Perfect in Weakness. So, we opened up with that verse. I also want to open up with 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 49 and 50. And it says, And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and fell upon the face of the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling with a stone, and smote the Philistine and slew him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. And so I bring up that story just because I'm sure a lot of y'all know that story. It's a very widely known story, and especially in Christianity, it's just very known.
I mean, they talk about it in March Madness.
And so I bring it up because David, he was a small, young boy who got overlooked. His brothers got picked to, go out and try and defeat Goliath, because Goliath was calling.
Yeah.
For 40 days, it said he called for someone to come out and fight against him. And so, like, before, I just read, before then, David, his father told him, hey, bring this to your brothers. Go and bring this to your brothers, bring this to the captain who's over them, and, go out there. And so he did, and he realized, he was like, y'all are all scared, but, I know my God, and my God can help me with this. Like, I may be small and weak, but His strength is going to help me in this circumstance. And
I got a big God.
That's what, that those verses are telling you. He went out there with a sling and some rocks, some smooth rocks. Bro. That's what he went out there with. He didn't go with a sword. He didn't go with a bow and arrow. He didn't go with none of that. And he went out there and he said, well, I've got this is what I've got.
Didn't take armor.
Didn't take, like...
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. And, he went out there and just slung that thing and...
Boom.
Knocked him out.
When it shouldn't be. Like, Goliath was mocking him, making fun of him. Like, what are you doing out here? Send me this little boy out here. Like, I was calling for warriors to come, and we'll settle this right here. And you sent out a kid. But he came with power. Came with power on high, but not his own. And that is what we're talking about today. Strength when you're weak. So, and Paul is talking in 2 Corinthians, he's talking about his weakness, and it says, to continue verse 9, most gladly, therefore, I will rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. So it doesn't matter the problems that I have, the infirmities in my life, the weaknesses that I have. Moses wasn't a good speaker, but he spoke to the people. He spoke to Pharaoh. He brought his people out. And you can go through Bible like we was talking about. You can go through the whole Bible, and pretty much all of them are where the Lord found weakness and then made himself strong. He covered the gap. The Lord will do that for us. So no matter your struggles, your weaknesses, your infirmities, like Paul is talking about, it doesn't matter what you have. None of that can hold you back from doing what the Lord has destined you to do.
Right.
Because that plan is made by him, the author, the creator, the one that writes all these stories, the one that created the whole universe, started at the beginning, and he's there at the end. He made that plan for you. He made that purpose for you. So he's got you. Whatever he has decided that you need to do, he's going to make sure you have the ability to do it. He's going to give you the tools, the means, and wherever you fall short, he covers that gap. That's what we lean on him for.
Right.
And so anytime that we're feeling inadequate, or we don't have, I could never do this, I could never do that, and I don't like you said, I ask a lot for our youth to speak. A lot of them say, I don't like speaking in front of crowds. Oh, I could never speak in front of a crowd. Yeah, you can. Because you can preach or you can talk to a group of friends and there may be 20 or 30 or 40 of us in there. That's going to prepare you to talk to a friend at school. But where you think you don't have the confidence, the boldness, you stutter through stuff. Y'all know me. I dread reading scripture out loud. I love reading the word. I love listening to the word. I don't mind reading it out loud at my house. But to get up and read a bunch of scriptures, I stutter through it. I'm a slow reader. But the Lord helps me through it. So for all the excuses, and we're not talking about just preaching, but just moving this mission in general, any excuse or weakness that you have that can stop you from getting this mission moved and getting this gospel to other people, there's nothing that can stop you. There's nothing that weakness that, okay, you can't do it because of this, because the Lord will give you strength. The Lord will cover those weaknesses for you.
Right. And I had only not prepared. That's the story that came to my mind when we thought of this topic. But one that just came to me is Samson. Talking about Samson, he had his hair, and his hair was where his strength came from. And you know, it got cut, and he got captured. They put him away. He was locked up and couldn't really do anything. And they took his eyes out. He was blind. And so thinking of that, think of like how when you're going through these situations, you feel weak and you're like almost blinded to the things that you're not seeing. Like there's always a war being waged. Always, like there's things that are going on spiritually, and so you're not seeing those things because you're weak. You're weak in the spirit, so you're not you just in between. I'm here, I'm there, wherever, but in that moment, God helped Samson. He broke from the chains and killed all the men there with a jaw of a donkey.
When he brings the columns down, said he had more deaths then than he did in his entire life. But
Yeah.
So after his struggle, like you said, after his struggles, he comes through where his hair starts growing again, and God gives him strength after he's getting mocked and ridiculed, and that was his biggest victory that day. But yeah, it came after some pretty tough situations.
Yeah, and there's always times you're gonna feel so weak, and think about in the sense of you're going to church and maybe you're just not feeling what you feel like you should be feeling, like good words going forth. Maybe even you could be doing all the right things, but you're just not feeling. You just feel like you're going out, walls blocking it, like nothing's getting through, and a lot of times that's where a lot of it's like tests that God's testing your faith. Like, hey,
You trust?
Is your relationship good enough to when this comes up? Are you gonna keep going or are you gonna stop?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's where a lot of people fail. They get to that weak point, but they don't continue, and they're like, the Lord, He's not helping me right now.
Yeah.
I feel like
I can't see it out there. I heard somebody say before about talking about faith, that faith is like you're walking on a bridge and the next board isn't there until you put your foot down.
Right.
So you're just stepping and you're trusting and believing, having faith that the next one's going to be there when you step. You can liken that to your weaknesses. Like you'll put yourself, like you put up a wall, put up a stop sign, put yourself in a box because you don't see the connecting point from here to there. And if I'm going to get there, I don't have what it takes to make the gap. So I got to stop here. Not understanding, no, God's going to make the gap.
Right.
You just got to keep going. The obedience. You just got to believe that He's going to, because you got to believe. You can't just walk out there and not believe. You got to believe and you got to trust Him that He's going to put it there. Believe He can. He's God Almighty. Trust that He will, because as long as you're walking in His will and walking in the purpose that He has for you, He's going to provide that for you. He's going to make up that gap. But you got to get yourself out of your way, kind of. And when you're trying to get yourself out of the way, we tend to do two things. You either stop, like the walls you're talking about, or you try to grab the strength from somewhere else.
Right.
We lean on our own understanding. We try to have our own strength. And we're just talking about not going out there with armor. Saul said, here, like, you can't go out there like that. Here, take my armor. And he's putting it all. Well, Saul's head and shoulders above everybody.
Right.
Saul's huge. And David is the runt. And so he's putting on all this armor, and it don't fit. It's too big for him. It makes it worse because you got to imagine, like I imagine myself, like probably like a little teenager out there, and you're trying to put on, okay, think about it like this. I did this. I don't know if anybody else did this. I used to put my dad's jacket coats on when I was a little kid, and I got pictures of like them things hanging halfway to my shin, you know, and it didn't fit me right. And so that's kind of how I see David.
Right.
He's putting on this armor, and it's huge, and it doesn't fit, and it's uncomfortable, and he can't really do anything in it. He definitely won't be able to sling that sling. He probably couldn't lift a sword hardly.
Right.
So you try to start bringing stuff in on your own, and let me try to put on this other stuff to where I can make up the gap. Well, of course, you fall apart.
Right.
That doesn't work. That wasn't made for this journey. And so then you fall. Now you're embarrassed or humiliated or whatever it is. Now you don't want to try anymore. So you usually do two things. You either stop or you try to get there on your own. But what we got to do is trust that, hey, Lord didn't give me this armor. This ain't my armor to wear. He gave me this. He gave me this training. He helped me grow through these situations.
Right.
And so I'm going to go out there now. David killed a bear and a lion. He had never killed a giant who was the champion of the Philistines. But I've been through some things before. And so when you start thinking about, okay, I've struggled with, I don't know if I'll ever be able to do this. I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. Reach back in your life and see, hey, is there a little battle that you've won before? Right. Is there a little time that the Lord brought you through? That was preparation. You trusted him then. Let's trust him for a little bigger because there's levels. You're going to keep going further and further in levels, but you got to keep trusting him at those next levels. Right. I think personally what gets some people is they'll go far, but they'll get to a place that either is convenient, which is another episode topic. You get convenient, you get complacent, you stop here. Or for whatever reason, you get so far and then you're like, I don't know if he'll let me get there.
Right.
You think about the disciples, which we're all growing, right? We're all growing. Disciples were growing. You get to disciples and you see everything that they've seen, but you still see them fall in the pitfalls of things that the Lord's already done. And that happens to us sometimes. We get so far, we're like, well, how's the Lord going to get us from here to here? But he already has. You've seen him provide that. This is nothing. It doesn't matter if it's the sniffles from the pollen outside or cancer. That's nothing for the Lord. He can do that.
Right.
No big deal. Blindness, death, whatever it is, he can do that. It's no big deal. There's not like, oh, man, I really got to put in a little extra work. It's a word from him. We're sitting here, the universe, well, I'm kind of going on, but like the universe is sitting here. All the planets, they're out there because he said so.
Right.
On his word. The sun rises every day because he said to. It just keeps going. So it's nothing for him to cover up your weakness with his strength. But we got to trust him that he will, or we're never going to take that step to where he will. If David said, I don't know if he can do it, you don't go out there and who knows what. We probably don't read about him, actually.
Right.
We probably don't read about him.
Right.
He ends up being somebody like Saul who turned away from, he was anointed, but he turned away. That's what story we end up reading, something like that. But because he trusted him, now we can read of the great battles that he won. David killing his 10,000s, and he continues to trust. He slips up too. If you read the Bible, David slips up a lot. But he continues to go out there and allow God, where he is weak, have his strength take over.
Right, and I think, like you were saying, people go so far and they get to a point, and I think another thing is they think they're not worthy enough of that. Like,
oh yeah,
that's one big deal. And yes, we're not worthy of anything that the Lord gives us. Number one, like that's just like we're solely here because he was the ultimate sacrifice, and we're living according to his word and what he has for us.
Right, his grace. We didn't earn it. He didn't ask us to.
Right. And so you get to a point where like you're like, okay, this is, I like it. You know, talking about getting complacent, convenient. But then you're like, they see what could be ahead for them. They're like, like, I can't do that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure like some of the greatest preachers in the world felt that way whenever they, they're doing whatever they're doing throughout their life, and then the Lord's like, all right, I want you to be a missionary, or I want you to be a preacher, evangelist, whatever. And they're like, me? You want me
Yeah.
to go out all over and preach the word?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was rough, their first few times. Obviously, I mean, I know like the first time I ever spoke, it was rough. Like you feel like there's so much blank
Me
space.
too. Me too.
So much blank space, and it's just like you have to find a rhythm, and I feel like that's what people they feel like they can't get that far. Like they feel like there's like you were saying in the last episode about going deeper.
Yeah.
They get to a point where they're comfortable. They're just floating. Their toes are touching the bottom, and they're like, I don't like this is. I'm good being here. I'm safe.
Yeah.
I'm not submerged. I'm not caught up in the waves. But that's just what comes with going deeper and going out further and getting deeper in the Word of God. It just you have to allow yourself to get past, hey, my mind, my flesh is telling me I can't do it, but the He's already spoken into your. If you're already thinking
Pushing
that,
you.
He's already spoken that into your
Yeah.
life. So like, all you have to do is just take it and go with it. And I feel like that's where a lot of people it stops them, and then that's where they start getting weak, and they're like, well, why didn't the Lord get me to this point? Maybe like they stop getting used or something. Like they're not speaking as much, they're not singing, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And like, man, maybe the Lord's trying to tell me something. Maybe I should just back up and get back to, where I was before I started. And I feel like that's where a lot of people lose so much of their experience, their wisdom, and their walk with God.
Yeah. They get out there and maybe it feels like it don't go, and that's kind of another thing. It don't go where they thought it was supposed to go.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, well, I'm totally wrong here. Well, and they say all the time, Lord didn't bring you this far to bring you this far.
Right.
He brought you here to see you through, but you got to stay with him. He can't see you through if you walking away, but you got to stay with him for that confidence. But yeah, that weakness starts settling in, that doubt starts settling in, and it creates that weakness. And now or the doubt, and you come back and yeah, you almost lose ground. Like you said, you lose ground. But if it's, like I said, you can either go, I can't make it, or I can't do it, or you can go up there and try to make it on your own. Like, I'm not going to say I walk up there. One, Pastor said this at our lift meeting, like, what is a good sermon? Like, you may think something was a bad sermon. I may think it was a good sermon. And the Bible said we're saved by the foolishness of preaching. So, but I go up there thinking, here's what I got. I'm confident in the word that the Lord gave me. But I know if I get up there and just roll with Nate, it ain't going to go well.
Right.
So before I go up there, I always pray, Lord, use me as a vessel. Control my words. I'm here to do whatever you want to do, but I can't do it without you.
Right.
I know that's you know what I'm saying? Like, I'll go talk to people. It ain't a big deal to me. But to go up there with the gospel, to go up there with the word, to be able to feed his people. The word's always good. I'm confident in the word. But I'm not confident in myself because I know I'm human. I know I mess up. I know I make mistakes. And so if I was to stop right there, I would never get used speaking. So, Lord, I can't do this without you. Be there with me. And I walk out expecting him to be there with me. And a lot of time, anytime it's going well, obviously that was him. Times that it's gone bad, which it does, that was me slipping away. Like almost like Peter when he kind of looked away, start slipping down. But what'll happen when we start leaning on our own understanding is we get caught slipping. But I think on the other side of this, in our weakness, where we got to trust him to be strong, when we focus on that rather than his strength, stops us from doing whatever we're supposed to do. And we talk about speaking, but I mean, that's singing, speaking to somebody in a grocery store, talking to your family members, whatever it is that's stopping you from moving this as far as you need to move it or where the Lord has impressed on you to move it, is the doubt that's reaching in your mind of your weakness. Don't worry about that weakness. Don't matter.
Right.
Your weakness doesn't matter because the Lord has way more strength. It is sufficient for wherever he needs you to go. And so whatever's stopping you from starting a P7 or starting that at-home Bible study with your friends or seeing that person that you know they're struggling a little bit at the house, or you know a little bit of their home story or whatever it is, whatever's stopping you from just being that example to them. And I always say, don't walk up there and slap them with a Bible. Like,
Right.
you're going to need a connection with them. But whatever's stopping you, the doubt that's in your mind, the weakness that you think you have from doing these things that you know the Lord has set before you, I know it's not, it's easy, just forget about it. It's not easy. You got to make a conscious decision that I know I have that infirmity. I know I fall short here. I know I stutter. I know I'm shy. I know I'm an introvert. I know I'm an extrovert and maybe come off too strong. And that's something I got to work on. There's some things that you know about yourself, but it doesn't matter when it comes to I can't do anything for the Lord because of these things. Forget about that. You have those things and the Lord's going to use you in spite of those so he can get his glory from it.
Right.
That's where it doesn't matter. He uses me, great. He uses you, great. He uses Pastor, great. But it's not because we were great men of God or Sister Tiff or Sister Krista or Meg, whoever it is. It was because we were willing to say, hey, I know I'm weak here, but I'm trusting God has me. And when you start stepping into that, then you start seeing his strength and his glory. Because I'll think back to times in my childhood, knowing things that I struggle with, like bad temper. Like, there's no way I should be able to go out there and play ball every Sunday.
Right.
And not just lose it on people. For Nate.
Right.
Like, if I don't win every game, I'm going to go pout. I was a sore loser growing up. But the Lord has helped me with that. And so there were some times where I was like, maybe I shouldn't even go play because what if that side comes out?
Right.
And that's something so small. That's something so small. That don't even really impact the kingdom. But if I don't go out there and fellowship, maybe it does. Or maybe I don't make a connection that I could have made that day. So I'm trusting that, Lord, I'm trying to do the best I can. When I go out there, you're going to make up the gap to where you're going to give me self-control. You're going to help me have all these fruits that I'm striving after. You're going to make up the gap where I'm weak to help me be able to control my temper, to help me to be able to control that competitiveness where it's competitive, but I'm not getting outside of his will. These things are going to help him or help us. If we see our weakness, we identify them, but we just say, Lord, I'm trusting you in the strength.
Right. And I'll say a few things we're wrapping up. To me, well, it should be for everybody. The Lord's strength will always overcome any weakness. Not just your weakness, but any weakness. Like, take the story of Job. Everything in his life just went out of the window. He was struggling, but he always knew that the Lord had him, and he knew that the Lord would keep him. So he just kept his faith and kept going and pushing forward no matter any circumstance.
Even have bad days.
Bad days.
He had bad days. You know what I'm saying? It ain't like I was told the story of Job where it was like he walked around with a smile every day.
Right.
Then I read it for myself and was like, no, he didn't. But he never lost faith in the Lord keeping him.
Right. And so the Lord's strength will always overcome the weakness. And so I just feel like that's just what I want to end on.
Absolutely.
I love this episode. It's a good episode. I feel like I said it for every episode. I just love love doing this.
What I always say, the word's good. If we stay in the word's good.
Right.
Episode will be fine.
But we're excited. This is episode 2 of season 2. We're going to keep pushing them out as every second and fourth Friday?
That's the plan. Every second and fourth Friday of every month is the plan. And hey, as long as y'all want to have it, y'all keep sending. Hey, this is what we want to do, though. Comment below. What do y'all want to hear? We got a suggestion box. We're getting a suggestion box in the youth center. Write down ideas, topics that y'all want to hear about, scriptures, whatever it is. We'll talk about it. This for y'all's podcast. This is for y'all. We'll get on here and talk. We're gonna have more guests in this season.
Yep.
But as we leave you, just remember your weakness Identify it, but don't dwell on it. Understand that the Lord's strength will cover that weakness. We love you guys. We'll see you for episode 3. See y'all next time.